the country. This budget bill is an absolute disaster. It is going to kick over 10 million people off of their health care. Medicaid covers about a quarter of all Americans, in order to pass along a new $1 trillion tax cut for just 1%. Nobody in this country is asking for that. And in addition, it's going to dramatically drive up the deficit. Now, I heard the Treasury Secretary say that who cares about the downgrading of our credit rating from Moody's? That is a big deal. That means that we are likely headed for a recession. That probably means higher interest rates for anybody out there who is trying to start a business or to buy a home. These guys are running the economy recklessly because all they care about is the health of the Mar-a-Lago billionaire class. They only care about their corporate friends. They are going to destroy this economy. They are going to throw millions of people off of health care just so that they can pass along a benefit to a small handful of very rich Americans. That is deeply unpopular, and my hope is that it won't pass, that enough Republicans see that nobody is asking for that massive investment in only a small handful of Americans, that they'll vote against it.
Let me ask you, you raised the issue of Moody's downgrading the nation's credit rating, and of course they do cite the debt that the nation has accrued, of course, over decades in Democratic and Republican administrations. Why didn't Democrats do more to address the debt when you all were in power?
Well, I think it's important to remember that some of the most important legislative achievements during Joe Biden's presidency were done in a way that reduced the deficit. In fact, the Inflation Reduction Act, which made massive investments in renewable energy, reduced prescription drug costs, was done in a way that drove down the deficit, not driving the deficit up. Most of the deficit was added under Joe Biden's presidency was in those early days when we were still recovering from the pandemic. But there's just no doubt that it was Donald Trump who added more to the deficit than any president in the history of the country, and he is on pace to do it for a second time. It's going to crater the economy. And listen, it won't have an impact on his billionaire friends. His Mar-a-Lago crowd will come out all right, but it will impact the regular people I represent in New Britain, Bristol, and Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Former President Biden did see $4 trillion added under his administration. I would like to talk about former President Biden. Newly released tapes from Mr. Biden's 2023 interview with special counsel Robert Hur show him really struggling to recall key moments, including the dates, the death of his son, Beau, as well as when former President Trump, at the time former President Trump was elected. Take a look.
Month Beau died, May 30th, 2015. 2015 he died?
May 2015.
I think it's 2015.
I'm not sure the months or, but I think that was That's right, Mr. President.
And what's happened in the meantime is that Trump gets elected in November of 2017? 2016.
Senator, is this audio proof that President Biden shouldn't have run for re-election?
Well, I don't know that that's a particularly fair excerpt. That's a very emotional topic for the president. But obviously, in retrospect, the president should have gotten out of the race earlier. There's no doubt that the Democratic Party would have been better served by having the ability to have an open primary. Kamala Harris probably would have done very well in that process. But in retrospect, we lost. And so I don't think you can defend the way in which our politics played out. I've said is that, like anybody who reaches that stage in their life, some level of diminishment. But I got to work with the president pretty closely in 2022 and 2023, and I saw a president who was passing legislation and helping the American people at a pretty unprecedented rate. That being said, by 2024, the American people had decided that they wanted somebody new. They wanted somebody younger, and it was a mistake. It was a mistake for Democrats to not listen to the voters earlier and set up a process that would have gotten us in a position where we could have been more competitive that fall.
Let me ask you this. The new book, Original Sin, by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, goes even further and actually details what they call a cover-up from the White House, from top aides around the president. Here's a little bit of what they have written. Quote, one senior White House aide who left because they didn't think Biden should run again confessed to us that we attempted to shield him from his own staff. So many people didn't realize the extent of the decline beginning in 2023. Do you think some top officials in the Biden White House covered up the state of his mental health at the time?
Well, I haven't read the book, and so I to say the allegations they make. But I know that I worked with him throughout 2020-22 on the gun bill, which has saved, by the way, thousands of lives. He was intimately involved in those negotiations. I was in the White House in the fall of 2023 doing an hour-and-a-half-long meeting on some really complicated developments in the Middle East, and I saw a president who was in control. So that's my experience, but I admit that by 2024, the American public had made up their mind, right, that they wanted the Democratic Party to nominate somebody new. And it was absolutely a mistake for the party to not listen to those voters.
Just to be very clear, do you bear some responsibility as well?
Oh, I think we all bear responsibility. Listen, and I think, we maybe didn't listen as early as we should have, in part because we have immense loyalty to this man who had led this country out of a pandemic, who had been maybe the most prodigious legislator as a president, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Act, the bipartisan gun bill, in a generation. But ultimately, in retrospect, you can't defend what the Democratic Party did because we are stuck with a madman, with a corrupt president in the Oval Office, and we should have given ourselves a better chance to win.
Well, let me ask you about part of my conversation with Treasury Secretary Bessent, in which I asked him about that $400 million jet that Qatar is offering to the president, to the United States. President Trump said it would be, quote, stupid not to take it. What is your response to that argument that the U.S. deserves the biggest plane, and President Trump says it's actually going to ultimately save the U.S. money?
So why did he choose these three countries to go to for his first major foreign trip? It's not because these are our most important allies or the most important countries in the world. It's because these are the three countries willing to pay him off. Every single one of these countries is giving Trump money. The plane from Qatar, an investment in his cryptocurrency scam from the UAE, and they are asking for national security concessions in return. This is the definition of corruption. Foreign governments putting money in the president's pocket, and then the United States giving them national security concessions that hurt our own security. By the way, the plane is not a gift to the American people, as the secretary said. It is going directly to Donald Trump. That library will take a decade to build, and so once he leaves the White House, until the library is built, he gets to use that plane to fly around all of his billionaire friends, while his policies result in millions of Americans losing their health care and having to pay higher costs. That is the definition of corruption.
All right, well, we'll watch how it all unfolds. I know Democrats are discussing various ways to potentially try to block